got kind of a big show for you today, guys. Welcome to the Young Turks. James Comey's been fired. Donald Trump's in a world of trouble. I'm going to tell you exactly how much trouble. I'm going to tell you why James Comey was fired in the first place. We've got the blow-by-blow description of that. Later in the show, I will also be telling you who should run for president for the Democratic Party. Lots of fun announcements today, but I believe that we've got the big announcement that I was teasing for you guys for quite some time now. So, without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to Congressman Ro Khanna. He joins us here in the studio. Now, this is a little unusual because normally we don't have guests in the main show, The Young Turks, but we had Bernie Sanders on and we have Congressman Khanna on. I wonder why that could be. All right, Congressman Khanna is from the 17th District of California, and he recently won election against an incumbent, a very long-term incumbent. Well, Congressman Khanna, are you aware of something called the Justice Democrats?
Of course I am.
You are. The strong progressive wing of the Democratic Party that's uncorrupted by corporate and PAC money?
Absolutely.
Yes. Quick question for you. Will you join the Justice Democrats?
Yes, with enthusiasm.
Okay, so you're officially a Justice Democrat now?
I am.
Okay. One more question for you. Will you be our champion?
I would be honored to.
There's a sitting US Congressman, a Justice Democrat. Now, I'm the host of the Young Turks. I'm also one of the founders of the Justice Democrats, so welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on this with Bernie Sanders being your only other guest. So.
Yes. We have a lot of guests on TYT interviews, but we don't normally do it on the Young Turks, so it's great to have you here. So, as a sitting US Congressman joining a new wing of the Democratic Party, that's a big move. Why? What do you like about the Justice Democrats?
It's time that the Democrats had a clear, bold, progressive vision, and that we had spine and willingness to stand up for those bold, progressive ideas. And that's what Justice Democrats are about. It's for Medicare for all, free public college, no corporate PAC money. This is what the Democratic Party needs to stand for. So, of course, the skeptics will say, no, you can't not take corporate or PAC money and win elections. You guys are being unrealistic. Well, I did. I didn't take PAC money or lobbyist money. And you know what happened? A lot of people in the district said, you know what, we're going to go and vote for. They take a pledge not to take PAC money, not to take lobbyist money. They're going to be rewarded by hundreds of thousands of people across this country. Bernie Sanders showed that.
So they'll also say, now wait a minute, primarying incumbents hurts the Democratic Party. What's your take on that?
I've never understood that argument. And I promised, because I ran against an incumbent, and I said, look, if I get there, I'm not going to close the door on other folks. This is a democracy. These seats don't belong to me. They don't belong to anyone. They belong to people. And you ought to earn the right to represent folks. And competition makes you better. I don't understand why an incumbent is afraid. If someone wants to run against me, great. I'll go share my ideas, share my vision. It'll make our party stronger. And this is, we have a 97% incumbent re-election rate in this country. The turnover rate in the United States Congress is less than European monarchies, according to an Economist article. This is why people are so upset, and we need competition.
It's ironic because now everybody who gets into office immediately wants to, of course, burn the bridge behind them, because not all of them, but almost all of them at some point beat an incumbent.
Right.
Right. But the minute they're in, no, you can't challenge incumbents. And they say it hurts the party, but the Republican Party's been running primaries for a long time. They seem to be doing pretty well electorally.
And they had 17 candidates in their presidential election, and it energizes people. It gets more new ideas out there, and we need new, bold voices. People are going to stick up for their convictions. We need more women, more minorities. How are you going to get more women, more minorities, more progressives elected if you can never primary anyone? It was the same argument that I found so frustrating as a challenger who didn't have a famous name, didn't have connections. And I promised myself, I said, if I get there, I'm not going to make the same mistake.
Yeah, but you do have a cool name, Ro Khanna. Sounds like a Game of Thrones, either Dothraki or from Dorne or something like that. So how did you wind up winning? Because You know, Mike Honda was a very long-term congressman in California in a comfortably blue district.
Right.
So you had to take him on in a primary, and like you said, you had no name recognition, Dothraki or otherwise. And so, how in the world did you beat him?
And here's the thing: he's a decent guy, but and this is why we can't just say, okay, you can only run if someone is a terrible incumbent. But we had differences. I supported Bernie in the primary. He was a superdelegate for Hillary. I said we need to abolish superdelegates. I campaigned on a single payer and Medicare for all. I campaigned saying I'm not going to take PAC money or lobbyist money. And we had a great debates. And at the end, I won on a progressive vision, but the party wasn't any weaker. And it wasn't some awful negative campaign. And this is where I believe that challenges will actually strengthen the party. And if they're good incumbents, they'll win. If they're good challengers, they'll win.
Yeah, and what do you think is the best way to beat the Republicans in general elections?
I think it's one to have a bold, clear vision. Look at what the Republicans have done over the last 30 years. They have not moderated their vision. They haven't been incrementalist. They've had a spine for what they believe. We need to have a clear vision of how we're going to help people. What is our policy that's going to help someone in Ohio, in Michigan? In my view, that's let's give people a massive wage increase by expanding the earned income tax credit. Let's clearly stand up for a woman's right to choose and not obfuscate that issue. Let's be very clear about issues of racial justice. Let's be very clear of a single payer and Medicare for all. Let's talk about how we're going to make college affordable by making public college free. And let's say this is our vision and we have the guts to stand up for it.
Yeah, and to your earlier point about how it's not personal, it isn't. Mike Honda's a good guy, and and I think we had him on a long time ago on the Young Turks, and it's just a question of which policies do we like better. I mean that's what an election is supposed to be. So Cori Bush is a Justice Democrat nominee, right? She's a candidate, and she's running against Lacey Clay. It's not to say that Lacey Clay is a terrible person. It's just we think that Cori Bush is more progressive,
right? And
we like those, and it's a deeply blue district.
Yeah.
Paula Swearengin running against Joe Manchin now. That was announced yesterday. Now, Joe Manchin, again, I don't know him personally at all, but clearly far more conservative, right? Yeah. And Paula Swearengin far more progressive. So I just don't, like you said, Congressman Cotton, I don't see why that battle of ideas hurts the party. Doesn't a battle of ideas to see what people are most excited about, driven by, and will show out to vote for a better thing for the party?
It is, but it's not a better thing for incumbents. I mean, if you're an incumbent now, like I am, you say, okay, I've got a 96% chance of winning. Why take a chance? But that's what people were so frustrated with in the 2016 election. They were frustrated that they didn't feel like they had a voice, that they felt the game was rigged, that they felt that people decided in a closed door who could run. And I believe that if we have these vigorous challenges, young people running, progressives running, saying that they demand a bold vision, you're going to have incumbents more accountable. So you're going to have more incumbents signing on to Conyers single payer bill. You're going to have more incumbents saying, I'm not going to take PAC money. And you're going to have more people engaged in the process. In the long run, this is going to make us a better party.
So my guess is that this move will make you fairly popular with voters, right?
Well, hopefully, yeah.
No, and I'll tell you why, because which voter says, no, I'd like to have less choices, right?
Absolutely. I've said I will debate someone who wants to run against me. I've said, let's have third-party candidates. I don't understand why, if you have confidence in your vision and your record, you should not be afraid of competition. And I've never understood why people feel so risk-averse about competing. This is an election's an awesome opportunity to share your vision, to connect with people, to inspire people.
Yeah, it's partly because the Republican and Democratic parties have a duopoly on power, and they don't really like to give that up. So my guess is that your colleagues might not be overly happy about this.
That's probably true.
So how do you deal with that if they come and say, what are you doing here? You're helping a wing of the party that might primary me?
I say, look, it's not personal. In many cases, I respect the contributions of people who Justice Democrats may decide to run. In some cases, I may even think they're good incumbents who should win. But it's a philosophical principle that if we're not going to change, if we're not going to help break through the stagnation of politics and let in new voices, then we're never going to change the system. And so I would say, go run a good race. If you were a true progressive, you're likely going to win because there's so many advantages that incumbency has. In fact, welcome and embrace the competition.
Yep, absolutely. All right, now before we leave you, I heard your grandfather worked with Gandhi somehow. Is that true?
Spent 4 years in jail in Gandhi's independence movement in the 1940s.
Wow. I mean, you want to talk about a revolutionary and a guy who knows how to challenge power?
And that's, I think, what gives me a sense of perspective. You know, here he was in jail for 4 years. He spent 30 years of his life fighting for India's independence. He didn't know whether India would be free or not. And then you think of the consequences to me. So what's the end of the world? I lose an election or I don't get to be a United States congressman? It seems so inconsequential in the context of my grandfather's life. But here's what I realized from him. You have to have that level of conviction and willingness to be bold, willingness to believe in something, to have a shot at changing history. That's what we need in the Democratic Party. It's what Bernie Sanders had. It's the sense that I don't care where the chips are gonna fall. I have a vision for a society and I'm gonna fight for that. And that's what animates Justice Democrats.
Absolutely. Ro Khanna, the first sitting US Congressman that is a Justice Democrat. Thank you so much for joining us on the
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll be right back and we'll talk about the Trump mess and who should be the Democratic presidential nominee. That should be interesting as well. Be right back.
It's the post-game show. Brett Ehrlich and Kim Horcher join me.
I think there's an interesting thing to be written or done about the logic of repealing EPA regulations because that is baby killing.
Yeah.
Like you're a baby killer. Like everything you're doing is aborting babies. And you can go specifically to like Monsanto and pesticides that end up creating birth defects that abort babies. So in a way, that is an abortion clinic that you're starting by repealing FDA regulations and EPA regulations.
That's right. But we know what they really mean when they say that they're pro-life.
Right, and that's the thing for me is like I'm tired of everyone speaking in code and rushing to like confirm their pre-existing biases. I just want them to tell me what they're actually pissed about. Like it seems like with the things that we were talking about on one show we're like people are okay with Trump having his headlines and articles in this sprint to find some way to confirm what you already believe.
Yeah.
And you stop when you get it and you don't read the end of it. Like I get it, but tell me what you're actually mad about.
Okay, you know what? This is a good therapeutic exercise to close out the postgame show. Why don't we each state most angry about?
I'm the most angry about boycotts right now.
Oh.
Just like, oh, boycott it, that thing's the worst. Like if I were to get into a business right now, it would be litmus paper sales. Because everyone's like, litmus test on that, fuck you, boycott, delete.
Yeah.
And it's like, read the history of boycotts, which ones are good and which ones are like, you weren't gonna buy that shit anyway.
I am angry about willful ignorance. I am angry about throwing away data that we have applied intellectual power to for a reason. I am tired of the rejection of intellectualism or deciding that intellectual people are elitist or somehow they think they're better than you. Maybe they are, they know things and you should try to know things about something. Forcing yourself into the dark is never going to bring us forward. It's never going to end up with a positive result.
He's not a war hero.
He's a war hero.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured. Okay?
He said I had small hands. They're not small. I never heard that one before.
I just closed my Wells Fargo account.
I just divested funds from Wells Fargo.
I definitely urge you to do the same.
Please come divest. Divest today from all the big banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citibank, Chase. There are so many others.
Do it. We can make a difference.
Water is life.
All right, guys, how's that for fun, huh? Look, so some of you probably get the importance of that, that we got a US Congressman who's now just a Democrat. Some of you, understandably, if you don't live in Washington, might be like, oh, okay, that makes sense, that's cool. No, in Washington, power is everything. And so when a US Congressman says he's going to be part of a new wing of the Democratic Party, that's a huge deal. So let's see what happens now. Brace for impact. So justdemocrats.com, man. Go join up. Takes 10 seconds to join up and say I'm on this side of the Democratic Party. Strong progressives, uncorrupted by PAC money or lobbyist money. So. And then, if you want to donate, great. If you want to help Paul Swearengin running against Joe Manchin, great. Cori Bush running against Lacey Clay, great. There's going to be more announcements from Just Democrats soon. So now let me read a couple of tweets for you guys on this. Juan A. Delgado says, big announcement from the Young Turks. Congressman Ro Khanna joins Justice Dems as their first sitting congressman. Drew says the sitting congressman is now a member of the Justice Dems. The Joe Manchins of the world must be doing an investigation of the Trump campaign and their connections to the Russians. Sure, it's a wild coincidence. But they say, no, you don't understand. They wrote in their letter, the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General did. No, it's because of what Comey did to Hillary Clinton. Now, these are the same people who were chanting, lock her up, lock her up. But they say, the way that he mishandled the situation during a press conference, explaining all the things that Hillary Clinton did wrong, but not charging her. And they apparently thought the Democrats would be happy about this. No. That was a long time ago. He's now in the middle of an investigation of the president. When the president fires him, of course, people are going to think it's not what he did to his opponent, which he seemed to love and which we'll prove to you right now, but it's because of what James Comey was doing to Donald Trump in terms of the Russian investigation. So now they say, they're shocked and chagrined by what he did to Hillary Clinton. Back then, though, they seemed pretty happy when Comey announced 11 days before the election that he was reopening the Hillary Clinton investigation. Here's what Donald Trump had to say.
Why did you fire Director Comey? Why did you fire Director Comey?
Because he wasn't doing a good job, very simply. He was not doing a good job.
Sorry, that was what he said today. So today he says Comey's not doing a good job, but earlier, that was not the tune that he was singing. So let's go to Donald Trump quotes from back in the campaign. Now, this was earlier in the campaign. He says, well, I hear fantastic. I don't know, Comey, I hear fantastic things. Beyond fantastic. I can say that I hope he is straight up. I think if he's straight up, that she's not going to be able to run. Now, that was before Comey announced that he was not charging Hillary Clinton. But at that point, Trump thinks he's beyond fantastic. Then he decides not to charge her, but berates her. Then he decides 11 days before the election, hey, you know what? I'm reopening the investigation. At that point, Trump has this to say. I have great respect for the FBI for righting this wrong. The American people fully understand her corruption, and we hope all justice will finally be served. This is the biggest political scandal since Watergate. That's funny and ironic. And I'm sure that it will be properly handled from this point forward. Okay. Turns out there might have been a little bit larger scandal than the Hillary Clinton one, and that might be the Donald Trump one. So he went on to say at another gathering, he said about Comey, he brought it back. He's got to hang tough because there's a lot of people want him to do the wrong thing. What he did was the right thing. Now I'm telling you that today because today their claim is that they're firing James Comey for what he did to Hillary Clinton. Preposterous! At the time they loved it, and there's your quotes explaining how much they loved it and how much they thought it was the right thing, but I'm not done yet. Then we go to Reince Priebus. Now this was after they already got elected. He said Trump has confidence in Director Comey. We have had a great relationship with him over the last several weeks. He's extremely competent. And it goes on to talk more about him, okay? Then we're gonna go to Sean Spicer. Now Sean Spicer, this was not after the election, this was not right before the election, this was last week. That's the White House press secretary. He said, the president has confidence in the director, okay? So that is very, very clear. Now, let's go back to the campaign. And after the announcement that that Comey was reopening the investigation on Hillary Clinton, and let's listen to again Trump and Jeff Sessions, who of course now is the Attorney General, who fired Comey. Watch.
Lou, I don't think it's a little bitty matter. I don't believe he would re-announce this unless he thought there was something pretty darn serious here that he had to tell the American people about rather than keep it secret. Because if it's different from what he told the Congress in his testimony and the American people, then he had to correct. FBI Director Comey did the right thing. When he found new evidence, he had no choice but to report to the American Congress, where he had under oath testified the investigation was over. He had to correct that and say this investigation is ongoing now.
And I have to give the FBI credit. That was so bad what happened originally, and it took guts for Director Comey to make the move that he made in light of the kind of opposition he had, where they're trying to protect her from criminal prosecution. You know that. It took a lot of guts. I really disagreed with him. I was not his fan, but I'll tell you what he did, he brought back his reputation. He brought it back. He's got to hang tough because there's a lot of people want him to do the wrong thing. What he did was the right thing.
What he did was the right thing. Sessions not only said it was the right thing, he had no choice. That's the thing that they're claiming they're firing him for today. Look, if you're gonna fire James Comey because he's investigating you, at least bother to think up of a decent excuse for 5 minutes. I mean, that's the best excuse you guys could come up with. The thing that you praised him for to no end earlier, and that you feel so aggrieved for what happened to Hillary Clinton under James Comey, that's why you fired him. That is the world's worst excuse. Now, if that's not bad enough, we found a video of Donald Trump after he's elected. They're in the Oval Office, blowing a kiss to James Comey. Now you think, okay, this is the beginning of a joke and we're gonna show you some other video. No, we're not kidding. We're gonna show you the actual video. This is the guy, he says, now at this point he already knows what he did to Hillary Clinton. Later he would claim that they're so upset at how he handled the Hillary Clinton investigation that they had to fire James Comey. But they already know it when this is happening. Watch.
Oh, and there's James. Will you please? He's become more famous than me. Director Comey.
Oh, and there's James.
He blew a kiss at him. Now he's saying, oh yeah, I was so mad at James Comey for what he did to Hillary Clinton. After I blew a kiss at him, then I decided to fire him. Coincidentally, after he asked for more funding for the investigation of me and my ties to Russia. Does anyone in their right mind believe that? Even if you're a conservative, deep right-winger, do you really think, oh man, he's just sticking up for Hillary? You don't believe that. You know why he fired Comey. He fired Comey because he was looking into Trump and Russia. It is the most obvious thing in the world. maybe the last guy to investigate Trump, right before he puts the handcuffs on, could go, Okay. So now we move on to what happened right before, okay? So, what precipitated Donald Trump firing the FBI director, James Comey? Now, we all know, we've gone over this, that James Comey was looking into the Russian ties of the Trump campaign and possibly the Trump administration and possibly Donald Trump himself and perhaps financial dealings. So now what we find out today is the internal proceedings and what was happening inside the White House. As usual, leaks inside the White House, senior advisors to the president talking to the press, in this case Politico. So let's dive in there and see what happened. They explained Trump's firing of high-profile FBI director on the 110th day after the president took office marked another sudden turn for an administration that has fired its acting attorney general, national security advisor, and now its FBI director, whom Trump had praised until recent weeks and even blew a kiss to during a January appearance. Indeed. So that's a lot of folks fired or recused because of the Russian investigation. And you still think there's no pattern at all? Well, let's go further in and find out what was happening behind the scenes. They say that President Trump had grown enraged by the Russia investigation. Two advisors said, these are not advisors to Politico, they're advisors to President Trump. They're frustrated by his inability to control the mushrooming narrative around Russia, he repeatedly asked aides why the Russia investigation wouldn't disappear and demanded that they speak out for him. He would sometimes scream at television clips about the probe, one advisor said. Look, this guy's totally unhinged. Even his own guys know that he's unhinged. And look, if it was a no big deal issue, is he gonna be in a rage saying, why won't it go away, and yelling at the TV? Well, the dude's so unhinged, it's possible, I suppose. But more likely, the things that he gets most mad at are the ones that are truest. The ones that have the most facts behind them, and the things that he is most worried about. So they explained Trump had grown angry with the Russia investigation, particularly Comey admitting in front of the Senate that the FBI was investigating his campaign, and that the FBI director wouldn't support his claims that President Barack Obama had tapped his phones in Trump Tower. So he feels like, well, if I'm the president, you have to just do whatever I tell you to do, and if I tell you to lie, you have to lie. If I say Trump tapped my phones and it's not true, your job as the FBI director is to go out and lie to everybody. And when Comey didn't do that, he's super mad. And what are you investigating me for? I'm your boss. I'm not gonna allow you to investigate me. And you might find something. No. See, he still thinks he's running a family business. He's like, why would I allow one of my employees to investigate me? Yeah, of course I'm a crook. Look at what I did at Trump University. Look at what I did with the casinos and all the bankruptcies. What this is so silly. No, if I've got a guy investigating me and he's my employee, I fire him so that he can't find out what kind of a crook I am. He's like, no brainer, I got it. But that's not how the government works, because you're not just working for yourself, you're supposed to be working for all of us. So we have to make sure that you're working for us and not for your own financial interests or whatever other deals that you might have done. And the FBI director is not your lackey. He is not some lower level employee at Trump Tower that you could just fire when he annoys you by investigating you. Okay, now we're gonna get into how much Donald Trump misunderstands the world. You're gonna see what a knucklehead he is here based on what he thought was gonna happen. Okay, they explained that the fallout seemed to take the White House by surprise. Trump made a round of calls around 5 p.m. asking for support from senators. Wait, you fire the FBI director investigating your ties to Russia, and it surprises you that people are not on board with that? That they're a little concerned about that? He was even surprised the Democrats were pissed. Oh my God, that's so unbelievably stupid. Listen to this. White House officials believed it would be a win-win because Republicans and Democrats alike had problems with the FBI director, one person briefed on the administration's deliberations said. You think that you're gonna fire the sitting director for investigating you and Democrats are gonna go, oh, that's a win-win, yeah. Way to go, Donnie. That is so stupid. Even if you're on Donald Trump's side, how could you not see that that would cause everybody to go, whoa, you just fired the cop looking into you. That means that there's an excellent chance you're guilty. Even if he isn't guilty, how could you not see that that's what everybody would think? That would be the natural conclusion. Oh, I thought the Democrats would like it if I fired the guy investigating me. Oh, I'm telling you, he is way, way dumber than anyone else thinks. He's everything. Who knew healthcare was complicated? Who knew North Korea was complicated? Who knew that if I fired the guy investigating me that people wouldn't like that? I thought they'd like it. I thought they'd be a win-win. You did. The thing is, guys, what's amazing is he did think that. He is that dumb. Okay. Instead, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer told him he was making a big mistake. And Trump seemed, quote, taken aback, according to a person familiar with the call. You called the leader of the opposing party and you tell him you're firing the guy investigating you. And he's like, dude, I don't think that's a good idea, right? And you're like, what? You're not happy about that? Well, that's so weird. Who is that stupid? It's unbelievable how stupid he is. He thought Chuck Schumer would be happy about the news. Okay, by Tuesday evening, the president was watching the coverage of his decision and frustrated. No one was on TV defending him, a White House official said. Now, so this is Joffrey, right? The child king. So he's like, why is nobody defending me when I fired the guy investigating me? Why don't you go out there and defend me? Because it's a stupid, knuckleheaded move to do. Look, the only way that it's dumber than if he's guilty is if he's not guilty. If he actually doesn't have a deal with the Russians, firing James Comey is so, that's even dumber than I could even imagine. If somebody's investigating you and you didn't do it and you fired him, the message that you send to everybody is, I likely did it. Oh my God, but the reality is, of course he did it, of course he did it. And you think this guy's smart enough to cover his tracks? No, there's gonna be documentation everywhere. If it's not Comey, it's gonna be somebody else. I know he's gonna put in one of his henchmen to be the head of the FBI, Giuliani, Christie. Maybe he'll put in one of his knuckleheaded sons. Maybe he'll put Bo Dietl in. Okay, I don't know. It doesn't matter. There's too many people at the FBI who have access to that. There's also people at the Treasury Department who have access to your financial records, you idiot. What? Man, these investigations are more complicated than I realized. Okay, so then he gets mad, of course, the child does, and he starts tweeting. The Democrats have said some of the worst things about James Comey, including the fact that he should be fired. But now they play so sad. He's the president. He's writing things like they play so sad. God, if you're proud of this guy, you're one of the saddest people I've ever met. Like, oh yeah, I like it when the president's a baby. And you should go, why would he be defending me? You guys are playing so sad. And then one more, he says, Comey lost the confidence of almost everyone in Washington, Republican and Democrat alike. When things calm down, they will be thanking me. What's amazing about that is, I'm telling you right now, you think like that's him being like bragging and saying outrageous things to get people. No, he believes it. He is so stupid. I know I've said it many times, but I can't say it enough. He is such a child that he's like, no, they'll thank me. No, they'll thank me later. This will work out great. No. I thought it was gonna be a win-win. I didn't know being president was gonna be this complicated. I didn't know doing a financial deal with the Russians and then doing whatever they wanted when I become president would be this complicated and I would get caught. I didn't know that. You'll be thanking me later. My guess is thanking you is not what we're gonna be doing later. Okay, now let's go to the investigation and what prompted all of this, okay? So Comey, the FBI director, fired. Now let's figure out why it happened now. Because they did it in a panic. Sean Spicer wasn't ready, nobody was ready. They didn't have their talking points down, they hadn't called the senators. They fired Comey without even telling him. They sent one of Trump's private security guard goons to the FBI to deliver a manila envelope. What are we, in the mob? They didn't bother calling Comey. Comey finds out when the TV behind him says that he's been fired while he's out here in LA. And so why did they panic? And all of a sudden, with no replacement, no plan, all of a sudden, oh, you're fired, right? Well, let's get into that now. CNN reports Senate Russia investigators have sent a request to the Treasury Department's Criminal Investigation Division for any information related to President Donald Trump, his top officials, and his campaign aides, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee told CNN on Tuesday. Now, the Treasury Department is where they have the information on financial dealings. Oh, now this is where it gets interesting. Now, my leading theory on this was that he made not just, hey, you guys helped me win the election in Russia with some, you do some leaks, etc. And then, I'll be nice to you guys and I'll be more inclined in your direction. What I'd been telling you guys is, no. He made a financial deal with the Russians. Now, that was my best guess. Obviously, you have to prove that out. That's what Comey was in the middle of doing. And they were also looking at the Treasury Department to see if they could find such a financial deal. That's when Trump panics. So now Mark Warner is that leading Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, and he says, you get the materials that show if there have been what level of financial ties between, some of the stuff, some of the Trump-related officials, Trump campaign-related officials and other officials, and where those dollars flow. He says not necessarily from Russia. Well, he's doing an investigation and he doesn't have those facts yet. That's why he asked for the information. My guess is it'll be from Russia. That's why he fired Comey. He's like, no, I don't find out any of that. Okay. Now, FinCEN is the specific part of the Treasury Department that has that information. So CNN explains, FinCEN is the federal agency that has been investigating allegations of foreign money laundering through purchases of US real estate. That's exactly what we've been telling you about on the Young Turks. Trump has all these properties. In some of the cases, he happens to sell them to Russians at outlandish prices, way above what he bought them, way above the market value. One of his knuckleheaded sons, Eric Trump, brags to a golf writer a couple of years ago about, oh yeah, we got the loans for all the golf courses from the Russians. And so all that information would be at FinCEN, or a lot of that information in the Treasury Department. So on the one hand, Comey's investigating the FBI. On the other hand, the Senate Intelligence Committee is asking for that information from the Treasury just recently. Okay, all this is happening at the same time. Now, The Hill explains Trump also insisted that Comey's firing did not impact a discussion Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Moscow's ambassador to the US, Sergei Kislyak, earlier in the day. So that happened today. So he fires Comey the day before he was going to talk to the Russians. Then he has the Russian ambassador in and the Russian foreign minister. Remember, Kislyak, the ambassador, is the guy that Mike Flynn, our former national security advisor, had the conversation with and told him that, hey, this is what we think is going to happen with the sanctions. Then Mike Flynn lied, saying that they didn't talk about the sanctions, and that's why Mike Flynn was fired and stepped down from being national security advisor. So that same Russian ambassador comes in and talks to Trump right after he fires Comey. It's like, yeah, that's very good. Nice job, Donald. Donnie, very good in covering your tracks, okay? Donnie's like, oh, he did a good job, I thought it was gonna be a win-win, okay. Former FBI Director James Comey reportedly, this is also happening recently, now we're at the Hill again, requested more money and personnel for Bureau's investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election, days before he was fired by President Trump. Now, the plot thickens. So he's asked for more money to do further investigations. Trump finds out, a couple of days later he's gone. Now Trump, in his letter to Comey, wrote this hilarious sentence. He said, "While I greatly appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I am not under investigation, I nevertheless concur with the judgment of the Department of Justice that you are not able to lead the Bureau." Why would you write that in a letter if it has nothing to do with the Russian investigation? First of all, of course it's not true. There's no independent confirmation that James Comey has ever told Donald Trump that he's not under investigation. And according to Freedom of Information requests about documents related to that, they say that it might be under investigation, things that Donald Trump has said. So, of course, as usual, not true. But that sentence right there is I'm not a witch moment. Remember when this Senate candidate in Delaware for the Republicans, Christine O'Donnell, did this ad starting with, "I'm Christine O'Donnell and I am not a witch." what the hell? Why, are you a witch? Right? So when you say, this is not about your Russian investigation of me, okay? And you told me that I'm not being investigated anyway. And you're fired, so you can't talk about it. Okay, yeah, I got it, and everybody got it. You're so dumb, don't write that in the letter. It's a big red flag saying it's about the Russian investigation. But he's such a child that he thinks, oh no, if I write that it's not about the Russian investigation, they'll know it's not about that. Okay. Now back to CNN. CNN reports the news comes just a few days after the revelation that Senate investigators sent broad-based requests for documents to 4 key potential witnesses in their probe. Former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, former advisor Roger Stone, and former foreign policy advisor Carter Page. So requests for information and documents from those witnesses who might have had dealings with the Russians who were part of the Trump campaign. So walls are closing in. What does he do? He lashes out and fires the guy heading the investigation. Now back to Politico. They report, while shock dominated much of the FBI and the White House, the mood at Roger Stone's house in Florida was one of elation. Several Stone allies and friends said Stone, a Trump associate who's been frequently mentioned in the investigation, encouraged the president to fire Comey in conversations in recent weeks. So Roger Stone is asked by investigators for documents relating to the Russian investigation. He calls Trump, according to his own friends, and says, yeah, fire Comey so that he doesn't investigate us anymore. Trump fires Comey. Let's find out more about Stone. On Twitter, Stone signaled praise for the move by posting an image of Trump from The Apprentice saying, "You're fired." Stone declined to comment on Tuesday night, but said he was enjoying a fine cigar. These guys have no subtlety at all. So basically bragging about how they fired the guy who was investigating them. If I was you, I'd put that cigar away. You might be celebrating a tad too early. If you think there are no honest people in the country who can continue that investigation, and that there won't be any leaks about what they found out with Trump and Stone and all the other guys and how they made a deal with the Russians, I think you are sorely mistaken. All right. Now, there's so many stories on this. Okay, let me go to, let's go, I gotta take a break, right? Okay, let's take a quick break. Turns out Sean Spicer might get fired, and then I'm gonna tell you who should run for president on the Democratic side. I figured it out. Interesting, come right back.
Welcome back to TYT Sports. Jason and Francis here. This is where everybody has to listen. Welcome to TYT Sports, everybody. I am your host, Francis Maxwell. Jason here. Welcome to TYT Sports. Turks and Jerks. TYT Sports. Steph Curry signed with Under Armour.
Tom Brady's mad, by the way.
Do you hear me? Back on TYT Sports. Actually, leave a link in the description box below instead of lying about leaving a link in the description box below. Editor, throw up another picture of the UK bacon. And another. And in fact, throw in another one.
Let me see your belly.
Beast mode.
Total control. Bing, bing, bong, bong, bing, bing, bing. You know what that is, right? He said I had small hands. They're not small, are they? I never heard that one before.
1, 2, 3, 4.
There's always these weird cream cheese options. I can never just find the plain.
What about salmon?
Do I look like a grizzly bear?
Here, try this veggie.
Where's the plain? Where is it?
You're more of a grape drink kind of guy, right? Or try this mouthwash.
Where's the plain?
Do you like sexual healing?
Where is the plain? Where's the plain? Where's the plain? Where is it? Where's the plain?
Dude. Anna Rasparian.
No, I want the plain. Supervisor! Aren't you the supervisor? Isn't that the whole point of being supervisor? Why do you get to decide my cream cheese options? At what point did you decide there'd be no plain cream cheese? I don't understand.
Take it easy, man.
No, this is true just like with politics and anything else. If we don't stand up for ourselves, they're just gonna fuck us even harder. You're not gonna believe this. They kicked me out of the kitchen.
I have decided that I'm going to get ripped. Okay.
What?
Okay.
Like physically?
Yeah. Okay. What? You don't believe me?
I 100% don't believe you.
I will get so ripped. Here's my prediction: that someone at TYT will say, "Cenk, you've got to stop working out."
We're tired of you winning.
So you don't believe me?
Cenk, you don't have time to like do your daily duties for the main show.
Duties. You don't even have time for your daily duties. Because what you guys don't know is how great my muscles already are.
It's absolutely possible, but you can't have Leah run to the food truck to get you like 2 different types of grilled cheeses with like tater tots for lunch. Like you can't have that anymore.
Let's see what happens.
You also have to go to the gym regularly.
Let's see what happens. All I'm saying is, let's see what happens. Have I ever been wrong about a prediction? Almost never. Back on the Young Turks, Jessica Allison writes in the kiss of death, the press secretary saying he has the full confidence of the president. Yeah, Jessica, good point. Who do we go into next here? Derek Martin with a super old school reference. Donald Trump is so politically tone deaf, he's the William Hung of presidents. I like that old school reference. All right, Jessica B says Donald Trump has blatantly gotten away with incompetence without consequences. Figured this bullshit excuse firing Comey would work too. Well, it's true. He's gotten away with everything, so he thought this would. But this is a different thing. That's why I'm telling you, he doesn't get it. Anyway, Platypus Custer says maybe Trump will tap, no pun intended, his other daughter to run the FBI. Yeah, I didn't say it. Okay, now let's keep going. So of course, some Republicans step up to defend Donald Trump after the Comey firing. Mitch McConnell goes in front of cameras and goes, what independent counsel? What special prosecutor? No, of course not. Nothing to look at here. And then Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who is the deputy press secretary, now filling in for Sean Spicer, apparently soon to be fired. Well, we'll see how that turns out. Anyway, comes in with, what investigation? Watch.
A lot of the analysis concerns investigation. How will the firing of Comey affect that?
I don't think it affects it at all in any capacity whatsoever. You've still got the same people that would be carrying out that, whether it's through the Department of Justice, that process continues. But I think the bigger point on that is, my gosh, Tucker, When are they going to let that go? It's been going on for nearly a year. Frankly, it's kind of getting absurd. There's nothing there. We've heard that time and time again. We heard it in the testimonies earlier this week. We've heard it for the last 11 months. There is no there. It's time to move on, and frankly, it's time to focus on the things that the American people care about. They're not worried about this false narrative that the media continues to want to drive.
He just fired Comey. Time to move on already. I mean, why are we still talking about this, right? So of course, the president's loyalists will come out there and say absurd things like that. Now, on the other hand, there were plenty of Republicans who were like, I don't know, man, this looks pretty bad. Richard Burr is the head of the committee that is charged with investigating this, and he's a Republican, but he wrote, I am troubled by the timing and reasoning of Director Comey's termination. Like, really? We're firing him because of what he did to Hillary Clinton? I'm troubled by that very weak ass excuse. And why now, after we've known about that for months and months? Okay, Jeff Flake says, I've spent the last several hours trying to find an acceptable rationale for the timing of Comey's firing. I just can't do it. That is a sitting Republican senator going, there's no rationale for this. Of course he fired him because he was investigating Trump, not because of what he did to Hillary Clinton earlier. John McCain said he was, quote, disappointed with what happened. He went on to say the removal of Director Comey only confirms need for a select committee to investigate Russia's interference in the 2016 election. Now, what did I tell you guys? Once the Republicans start heading for the doors, that's when you know Trump's in a lot of trouble, because Republicans will stick together almost no matter what. If they're now all of a sudden tiptoeing backwards, like, and what did I tell you was the first step? Jason Chaffetz in the House. He's the guy who's supposed to be investigating Trump in the House, and he's a Republican. All of a sudden, he's like, I gotta go. I'm thinking of retiring. Yeah, he's a young guy, you know, a lot of ambition. Maybe he'll run for governor of Utah later, but for him to all of a sudden, and then at first he was like, yeah, I gotta go, right? I'm gonna leave. And everybody thought it was at the end of his term because his term just started. And then the next day he comes out, he's like, no, you don't get it, not at the end of my term. I gotta go right now. Because he doesn't want to be stuck investigating Donald Trump. It's a lose-lose for him. So now that's one of Trump's allies. A lot of these guys, not so much allies, right? Flake is never ginned to Trump to begin with. They've had interactions back and forth that were not pleasant. And then John McCain, of course, you remember what Trump said about him. I prefer people who weren't captured, said the guy who never went to Vietnam. Okay, so that's Donald Trump, got 5 deferments. Now, he ran against Governor Kasich in Ohio. Here's what Kasich had to say. He said, I am extremely troubled by the circumstances surrounding the dismissal of FBI Director James Comey, who has served this nation honorably. Both parties in Congress must put partisanship aside and put our country first to ensure there are full and fair investigations into Russia's effort to influence our election. So now this is step 2. Step 1 is when allies start backing away, like Richard Burr and Chaffetz, and they're like, oh, I gotta go, right? Step 2 is the Republicans he pissed off earlier are like, oh, payback's a bitch. When he loses Paul Ryan, who has never liked him in the first place, but knows that if he crosses Donald Trump, there's a huge price to pay with his base. When he loses Paul Ryan, it's over. That's when you know the resignation is coming. He hasn't lost them yet. That's step 3. All right, one more quote for you guys from the House, where Ryan is. Justin Amash, he's another significant right-winger, but again has had some disagreements with Trump in the past, says, my staff and I are reviewing legislation to establish an independent commission on Russia. The second paragraph of this letter, referring to Trump's letter firing Comey, is bizarre. Referring to how he's like, now Comey told me in private 3 different times he's not investigating me in Russia. He told me. Why would you write that? And of course it's bizarre. And by the way, sitting president is not supposed to be talking about ongoing investigations. So we've already gone through 2 steps of what it's gonna take to get Trump out. And these are the things I laid out for you ahead of time, and these are the things that are happening today. So those were your markers for if Donald Trump is in trouble, this is what will happen. 2 out of the 3 has happened. When Paul Ryan pulls the chute, Trump is done for. So look for that next. We already have a poll out, tytnetwork.com/Trump. Is Donald Trump done? I already voted yes. So Paul Ryan will be the final nail in the coffin. But I can see where this train is headed. And it's not headed for a good place for Donald Trump. Okay. Now let's go to Sean Spicer. Okay. So yesterday, Sean Spicer is told by the president, oh, by the way, I fired James Comey. Good luck trying to explain that, go ahead. And he said, what just happened? Okay, he's the White House press secretary. And of course, Trump stumbled into it without any plan at all. And now Spicer has to somehow figure out how to deal with this. So he's put in an incredibly awkward situation. And there's press all around him when all of this stuff breaks, when the news breaks. And there's cameras right around the set of bushes. So he goes with a couple of aides and hides behind the bushes. All right, this is going from bad to worse, right? And then an incredibly awkward interaction with the press happens, which I'm going to tell you about in a second. But today we find out the president was not happy with how Spicer handled this, and he's in a world of trouble. So let's go to Jim Acosta's tweet from CNN. White House sources, highest levels, including president evaluating Sanders, that's Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the deputy press secretary, subbing for Spicer in briefing room last night, quote, embarrassment, disaster. So the reason you're seeing Sarah Huckabee Sanders all over TV right now is because they've pulled Spicer. The president is so mad at how Spicer handled the situation last night that he's now having Sanders try out basically in prime time. It's go do all of these. I mean, look at how important this is, right? Spicer's not on vacation. This is as important a story as it gets. You just fired the FBI director investigating you. So when Spicer's not out there, yeah, that's a vote of big no confidence. By the way, one other thing the press is not talking about that might be happening, and I don't know, okay? I grant you that this is speculation. Maybe Spicer is uncomfortable defending Trump for firing the director that was investigating him. If you have any morality at all, and I don't know that Sean Spicer does, you could be uncomfortable trying to defend that horrific position. And by the way, if you fired Comey, likely he had something on you, likely you're gonna get caught. Anyone with, even if you don't have morality, with any common sense, pulls the chute and gets the hell out of there and goes, I don't do it, man. I left as soon as he fired Comey. So I don't know which way it goes. We do know that Trump is mad at him. Let me give you more details on that. According to CNN senior White House correspondent Jim Acosta, who cites 2 unnamed White House officials as his sources, quote, officials at the highest levels, including the president, are, quote, monitoring Huckabee Sanders, who will conduct the briefings for the rest of this week. Those officials, including the president, were reportedly not pleased with how Spicer handled the release of the news of Comey's termination. Now, then we go to the Washington Post and they explain that awkward interaction last night. They say that Spicer, quote, spent several minutes hidden in the bushes. Okay, and then when he comes out, he tells everybody, turn the lights off, turn the lights off, I don't want any lights. And he won't talk to any of the reporters until they all turn their lights off. I think there's a metaphor in there somewhere. Okay, whatever you do, I don't want the spotlight on this issue. Okay, so then they ask him, when's the last time Trump and Comey spoke? His answer, I don't know. I don't know. There's some, I don't know. I don't know. Okay, that's pretty bad. Now, I'm going to defend Sean Spicer. You know why? One, he doesn't know. Okay, I'm not kidding. Like the moron in chief, the president goes out and fires this guy who's investigating him, doesn't tell Sean Spicer anything, doesn't tell him the last time that he met with James Comey, doesn't tell him, doesn't give him a battle plan, then goes out there and goes, come on, go defend me, make everyone like me. But that's an impossible job. What you did was incredibly stupid and incredibly corrupt. And then you put Sean Spicer out there and go, okay, now tell the press what a wonderful thing it was. That's not doable. So, look, Sean Spicer is not a guy that I have a lot of sympathy for, but this is an impossible situation that he was put in. So if they wind up firing him, they're actually doing him a huge favor. So Sean, you might be annoyed now that you've been sidelined and they got Sarah Huckabee Sanders in there. But if I was you, I'd be counting my blessings, man. And I'd go into the president and be like, oh, I'm so sorry I let you down, that I couldn't defend you firing the guy investigating you. I'm gonna have to submit my resignation. Get out of there, man. Here's my message to Sean Spicer. Somebody take a picture of me. Get out. Okay, random reference to the movie Get Out. Okay. Quick one on Blumenthal. Let's do that real quick. Okay. Richard Blumenthal is a senator that's on the Democratic side. He thinks Comey getting fired is a disaster. Here he is on TV.
I've been calling for the Deputy Attorney General to appoint a special prosecutor. He's the one to do it in the Department of Justice because the Attorney General has recused himself. And I still hope that Rod Rosenstein will redeem himself and appoint a special prosecutor that's easily possible under existing regulations. What's needed is an independent, objective, impartial prosecutor, because only a prosecutor can bring criminal charges and hold accountable the people who may have committed treason or fraud or lied to the FBI. And obviously, the president is a potential target. Indeed, I think one of the very revealing parts of Jim Comey's testimony at the Judiciary Committee was when he refused to rule out the president as a potential target.
Wow. So now Richard Blumenthal at the end there is referring to when Comey was in front of the Senate and Blumenthal asked him, can you rule out the president as one of the people you're investigating? And he refused to answer that, meaning, yeah, he's a potential target. Those are heavy words that Blumenthal used. Treason, fraud, the president is a target of the investigation. So now Donald Trump gets super mad at that, and of course throws a temper tantrum. Now, is he gonna attack Blumenthal on any of the substance? Of course not. You know what he's gonna do, he's gonna attack Blumenthal on something random. So when Blumenthal was running in 2010, there was a so-called controversy about his record in Vietnam. He had said that he served during the Vietnam War, which actually is true, he was a Marine reservist. Now remember, when liberals said, hey, Bush didn't actually go to Vietnam, he was in the National Guard Reserve, Republicans were like, how dare you besmirch the honor of the reserve? Okay, so now Blumenthal in a similar situation, actually a much better one than George W. Bush was. Now let's see if Donald Trump believes that it's the same thing as serving in Vietnam and that he honors the reserves, right? Instead he tweets, watching Senator Richard Blumenthal speak of Comey's a joke. Richie devised one of the greatest military frauds in US history. For years as a Pole in Connecticut, Blumenthal would talk of his great bravery and conquest in Vietnam. No, he didn't. Except he was never there. When he caught, he cried like a baby and begged for forgiveness. And now he's a judge and jury. He should be the one who's investigated for his acts. That's the president of the United States saying that a senator cried like a baby. We've elected a child. This is what third graders do. And I'm sorry, third graders across the country, for besmirching your reputation. And one final note, on Vietnam, Blumenthal was in the reserves in the Marines, okay? What was Trump doing? 5 deferments. He got 4 for being in school. The 5th one, he was already out of school. And he said, oh, I have bone spurs. My daddy wrote me a letter saying, got a doctor to write me a letter saying I've got bone spurs. They asked him during the campaign, which foot was it? He's like, the right one or maybe the left one, I forgot. Oh, that does sound like it was a debilitating condition. Did you cry like a baby? Okay, now, finally, we go over to the Democratic side. I know lots of Comey news today. Comey and Kana. That's what today was. All right. I was recently in Washington and a lot of people understandably asked me, hey, what do you think, Cenk? Who's gonna run on the Democratic side in 2020 for president? It's a good question and one I actually didn't have a great answer for, because when you get past Bernie Sanders, it's not entirely clear who would be the front runner. And then I thought, oh, wait, there is a guy who actually could. Oh, how about Bernie Sanders? Now, there's a reason why everyone, including me, by the way, I'll fess up to this, thought, well, no, it's not going to be Bernie Sanders. Why? Because it's conventional thinking, and I was guilty of it for a couple of months here after the election. Well, Bernie Sanders is going to be too old. Well, let's investigate that. Yes, in 2020, when the election is, Bernie Sanders will be 79, right? But Donald Trump will be 75. Hillary Clinton, oh, God forbid, will be 73. A person who's often mentioned in these conversations, Elizabeth Warren, will be 71. They're all in their 70s. Now, let me ask you something. You take Bernie Sanders at 79 or Donald Trump at 75? You take Bernie Sanders at 79 or Donald Trump at any age? I'd take Bernie Sanders at 79 or 109 over Donald Trump at any age. So, look, guys, you got to get past the old ways of thinking. And so when Bernie first started running, people were like, no, he's too liberal. No, in the old days, he's too liberal. And today, people want a progressive. They want someone who's honest. Oh yeah, he just keeps saying the same thing over and over. Yeah, you know why? Because he means it. That's not a disadvantage, that's an advantage. Oh, he looks all frumpled and his hair isn't combed. In the old days, that would have been a terrible disadvantage because all the politicians were slick and they're like, hello, everybody. Right? These days, that's a disadvantage because we know you're a phony. It's a huge advantage for Bernie Sanders. So now, again, in the conventional way of thinking, they're like, well, Bernie Sanders will be too old. Really? I mean, people live really, really long lives now. He'll pick a great vice president. 79 is not that much older than 75. Presumably the person he'll be running against is Donald Trump, although I don't know if he'll make it. So I propose that maybe the most popular politician in the country is the one we should consider the front runner. I know, wild and crazy. So let me show you a recent headline. Bernie Sanders is the most popular politician in the country, according to a poll. The Harvard-Harris survey, published first in the Hill, found almost 60% of Americans view the Vermont senator favorably. Way ahead of Donald Trump, way ahead of Hillary Clinton, way ahead of everyone else, as you'll see in a second. In fact, if you say, all right, yes, but now look, remember he lost the primary to Hillary Clinton, who, by the way, had the entire establishment behind her, had the biggest brand name in Democratic Party history, okay? And he closed a 60-point lead anyway. So you say, oh, but they have all this nonsense talking points against Bernie Sanders. Oh, he only gets white Democratic voters. Really? Well, let's look at the polling and see what happens. Among certain demographics, the progressive politicians' ratings are even higher. 80% of Democratic voters, 73% of registered black voters, 68% of registered Hispanic voters view Sanders favorably. So it turns out, no, he's doing wonderful. Even among Democrats and every kind of Democrat there is. Okay. Meanwhile, how's Hillary Clinton doing? Look, I know that we shouldn't even be having this conversation. Hillary Clinton, you already lost to Donald Trump. But people in Washington are seriously considering it. No. Let me show you her numbers now. Her numbers now sitting at 35% favorable, 55% unfavorable. Bernie's at 60%, she's at 35%. I'll do quick math for you guys. That's a 25-point lead he has on her in favorability. This is not a conversation. So there is someone who is the presumptive nominee of the Democrats, and it is very clear. I'll give you one more though. Here's another poll. They looked at, so of all places, a Fox News poll. Even Fox News has to admit, Bernie Sanders, not only the most popular politician, the most popular anything in the country. They polled both politicians and issues and organizations in politics. Bernie Sanders came in #1, plus 29 positive. By the way, Donald Trump, -9. So if it's a Sanders versus Trump race in 2020, Sanders right now has a 38-point lead on him. 38. Now that's on the Fox poll that I just showed you. And then when you just look at flat out favorability, one versus the other, 61 to 44. Even there, a gigantic 17-point lead on favorability. That doesn't even take into account the unfavorable numbers that I was mentioning earlier. So, who's the presumptive nominee for the Democrats in 2020? It's the most obvious question of all time. And by the way, I remember when Hillary Clinton was the presumptive nominee, and the entire Democratic Party told us that no one should run against her. Hey, we have a very similar situation here. Someone who is the most popular politician in the country, lucky you, he's on the Democratic side, and he just ran. Now remember, Hillary Clinton lost the primary in 2008, so that shouldn't be a problem at all. Losing a primary earlier, they still had Hillary Clinton as the presumptive nominee. She lost to Obama, so she was next up. This is not my logic. I believe in primaries. I believe everybody should run, okay, no matter who I support. But according to the Democratic Party establishment logic, Bernie Sanders would be up next, and the guy up next is incredibly popular. Lucky you, Democratic Party. So I assume that you will all now fall in line behind Bernie Sanders and tell everybody else that they shouldn't even get into the race. Let's see how that turns out. Young Turks.
A progressive future requires a different kind of financial industry. I'm Joe Sandberg. I'm co-founder of Aspiration.com, an online financial firm you can fall in love with. The American financial industry came to serve itself and profit. I believe in a different path for business. Business should be about serving people, and that profit is a byproduct of serving people well. Aspiration.com is about our customers and our movement. We use what we call pay what's fair. You as the customer have the power to choose your fee. We trust you that if we do a good job for you, you'll choose to pay us. 10% of the fees that you choose to pay, we give to charity. Many of you are passionate about the environment and reversing the effects of climate change, but many of you also may be banking at a big institution that funds things like Dakota Access. It made clear what's inherently broken about Wells Fargo and so much of the financial industry. These organizations are obsessed not with serving people, but with serving themselves and their profit. You can stop Doppel by taking your money out of banks that fund Doppel and put your money into financial institutions like Aspiration.com. You don't have to sacrifice your values to do well financially. And that's why our motto at Aspiration is do well, do good. We have a popular fossil fuel free, firearm free, private prison free, sustainable investing fund at Aspiration called the Redwood Fund. And the minimum is just $100. The power and future is yours to determine. The choices you make with your money matter. And that's why we built Aspiration, because there's a different, better way to deliver both great banking and investing services that meet your needs and also match your values.
Robbie Canal, he calls his work urban beautification.
I didn't go out to be a street artist or to make posters. I was just compelled to do it. I was mad enough it didn't matter. It was like a form of minor civil disobedience even, you know, like, fuck you. How about your higher crime? Power operates to self-replicate itself, to maintain the status quo so it stays in power. When you go to do something like this to express yourself in public about an issue you care about, make sure you pick a bigger weapon, and the weapon is knowledge. The one thing about street art, it's not like I put up my posters to change anybody's mind about anything. The difference between propaganda and the kind of art I do is propaganda is telling people what to think. The way the art works, where the art works, is between the time you see it and the time you figure it out for yourself. I'm an optimist. I might have made a lot of ugly paintings about a lot of ugly people, but it's out of love, not for them.
Back on the Young Turks. Hey, there
what's
you
up?
are.
I mean,
Take it in.
I feel like we should always open with me.
I'm not going to disagree.
Let's open with me.
All right. This is funny tweet. Carlos Danger writes in, he's firing so many people, I think he thinks that he's still on a reality show. Wait, if he does, can we have it canceled? The answer to that might be, yeah, soon maybe, right? By the way, it's a good point. Like, that was his whole trademark thing. He fires people one after another on his show. And here he is in his administration, firing one person after another after another. Meatloaf is next. Be careful, Meatloaf. Okay. Dances with writes in, I'm all for Sanders, but prefer if he ran as an independent to avoid cheaters. Dances with, love you, but you're totally wrong. The Democratic Party infrastructure, you absolutely need it to win. Running as an independent, I shouldn't say absolutely. That's too absolute, if you will. But he already almost won as a Democrat, and running as an independent is infinitely harder. You got to trust me on this. I've covered politics for over 20 years. Running as an independent is much, much harder. You're not helping Bernie Sanders by saying that. You'd almost be knocking him out of the race. So I don't think that's the right way to go. Captain Jigglepan says Bernie has proven he can handle the stress like he's in his 40s. No problem for him. That dude has some serious stamina, man. We were at the death penalty dinner. We saw him there. And like, it's no big deal. He's just like boom, boom, boom. And he's just going around I mean, how did he not get sick during that whole campaign? That schedule is brutal. And he was totally fine, okay. Margot M with an excellent point. Of course, Mitch McConnell defends Trump. He doesn't want his wife fired. Remember, his wife is Elaine Chao and is one of the cabinet members for Donald Trump. Joe Rums. Okay, Casper.
All right,
I'm ready. What do we got?
All right, let's start off with Betsy DeVos getting embarrassed during a commencement ceremony. Betsy DeVos was the keynote speaker at the Bethune-Cookman University, which is a historically black college in Florida. And of course, there are going to be some students that are very much against her speaking at their commencement, especially considering her stance on issues relating to student loan debt and privatizing education. Now, graduates came into the auditorium smiling and listened to the ceremony politely until University President Edison Jackson introduced Omarosa, an advisor to Mr. Trump. Students started booing. Jackson stopped and said, "You don't know her, you don't know her story."
Yeah, I know her pretty well.
Apparently they know enough about her. Now, school leaders at the front of the room and some faculty applauded as he introduced DeVos to give her an honorary doctorate, which is always hilarious to me. Just let her give the speech. Why do you have to give her an honorary doctorate? Let's move on. But many students booed. When she began speaking, thanking Jackson, the room erupted in shouts. DeVos had to raise her voice as she thanked the moms attending the ceremony. Now, we have a short video kind of showing you what the scene was like. Let's take a look at that and we'll discuss.
Later today, I will have the honor of visiting Dr. Bethune's home and paying my respects at her gravesite. I am moved by words in her last will and testament, where Dr. Bethune described what she hoped her legacy would be. The beautifully written testament cited love, hope, and a thirst for education as the ideals she wanted people to embrace in her memory.
So, mixed feelings about this, but I want you to know a little bit more context. So Donald Trump, just last Friday, seemed to signal that he was going to cut a key funding source for schools just like this one. And so you can understand why people might be a little aggrieved that you're telling us that you're respecting traditionally African-American schools and they're doing this PR campaign, both Trump and DeVos are saying, oh, we're reaching out to these schools, reaching out with the back of our hand as we cut all your funding. Anyway, then, because to be honest, he's an idiot, so he doesn't really know what he's doing. We have no idea if he meant that or he accidentally said the wrong thing, because they then on Sunday flip-flopped and said, put out a statement saying we have, quote, unwavering support for historically black colleges. Now, do you know what his real position is? No, neither do I, and neither does he. Right? He has no idea because he's a pathological liar. So could he cut funding for those schools anyway? Of course he could.
Of course he can. Of course he can. And if we're not paying attention, of course he will. Now look, when it comes to Betsy DeVos, a lot of the negative attention that she got from the press focused on what she did in Michigan with turning public schools into charter schools. A lot of those charter schools ended up, failing significantly. And of course, a lot of people are concerned about that. But the issue with Betsy DeVos is not about what she can do to our public grade schools. It's about the impact that she has on colleges and universities. And so, look, I'm in favor of free speech, okay? Even if I disagree with what your speech is or what your political ideology is. I stood in favor of Ann Coulter giving a speech at Berkeley, but here's the thing, this is a commencement. This is not a situation where people are sharing ideas. This is a graduation ceremony. People are graduating, people are celebrating, right? So if you want to make an argument that, hey, Betsy DeVos should be able to speak and share different perspectives, that's fine on a college campus, just not during a commencement, okay? And also what she represents fundamentally destroys our, or exacerbates the problem that we have with student loans and with colleges, okay? Already, the Trump administration, with Betsy DeVos in it, of course, has done away with certain consumer protections for student loans, right? And they want to protect, the initial regulations passed under the Obama administration would protect student borrowers from these lenders and these collectors that go after them aggressively, right? Trump comes in, he's like, I'm doing away with that, okay? She is very much in favor of for-profit colleges and very much in favor of doing away with any regulation that was passed under the Obama administration to rein them in so they stop robbing American taxpayers and our students, right? She's in favor of those colleges, let's deregulate as much as possible. She represents everything that's wrong with the system. So would I be upset to see her at my graduation ceremony giving a speech pretending like she cares about the founder of my college, pretending like she's gonna go visit, the grave of the founder of this university? Yeah, I'd be upset. She has no business being there and acting as if she wants to represent the best interests of those students. She does not want to represent them, and I'm glad that the students are exercising their free speech in booing her when she's standing there and straight out lying to them.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if she didn't think like, what? I came here to talk to these folks. I'm just trying to reach out. But all the things, that policy positions that you have that Anna laid out is why they're mad at you. So if you actually want to have a conversation, what you should do is have it be two-way, because you're actually representing those people now. You're the education secretary. So how about if you, like, maybe after the commencement got together with some of the students and said, hey guys, what is it that you're upset about? Now, I'm not saying I'm going to fix it. I'm not saying that I'm going to agree with it, but let me hear you out. That would be amazing, right? So then that would be freedom of speech and an actual conversation. And so it doesn't even have to be a debate. You could just hear them out. Now, look, I know the speakers don't normally do that. And your point about commencement, I know people are trying to celebrate during their graduation. At the same time, if you don't want controversial speakers at commencement, I understand the distinction, but then you're gonna get like really vanilla speakers at commencement. So
yeah, great.
Okay, all right, I hear you.
Let's move forward. In fact, here's what I would prefer at commencements, okay? No speakers, okay?
That's a different point.
Let's go, let's move on with our lives. We wanna get our diploma and go, okay? So I'm not interested in hearing Betsy DeVos or whatever vanilla politician they're gonna invite onto the campus to pretend like they give a shit about what I'm going through.
I hear you. On the other hand, the last commencement I went to was my nephew's at Rutgers, and Bill Nye spoke. You might have enjoyed
awesome, awesome. I don't care.
Okay,
I love Bill Nye, don't get me wrong, absolutely love him. I will watch his show, I will watch whatever content he puts out there. I'm done with commencement speeches. I'd rather hear from the actual students than anything else.
Well, I don't know about that either. Okay, anyway, so finally though, on the booing and et cetera, my stance on that is, I think booing in the beginning is fine. 380 graduates turned their backs on her, that's a statement, but let her finish, and I think they did. So they made a statement on, we're not happy with your policies and we know them. We acknowledge that we know them, and we're letting you know them. You're giving a speech, we're giving you a little bit of speech back, and then they let her continue. And I think that's right. You let her give her a speech, and in the parts you don't agree with, you let her know a little bit without preventing her from speaking.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Look, it's like the equivalent of Ajit Pai, who is the FCC chairman, right? Doing everything that he's doing with net neutrality, essentially deregulating ISPs, so net neutrality is no longer a protection that consumers have. And then he comes here and he's like, I would like to have an interview with you guys, and expecting us to play patty cakes with him. No patty cakes for Ajit Pai, no patty cakes for Betsy DeVos, okay? It's time to stand up.
I like how Anna found the one person she thinks would most get under my skin.
Right, Ajit Pai. Okay.
So the guy trying to kill net neutrality, if he gave, would I invite him to give a speech at a Young Turks graduation? Like our interns are going back
like
into
our
the
annual
world.
holiday party, right?
Yeah.
You guys, hold. We got Ajit Pai. We want to share his perspective, different ideas. Get out of here. I know about his ideas, not interested.
Yeah. Probably not getting invited to a TYT party. I will concede that point.
Yeah. Take your gigantic Reese's peanut butter cup and get out of here. It's got like a mug that has Reese's on it.
Oh, really? What a random fact to know about Ajit Pai. I didn't even know about it. Man, you really know the life of Pai.
Because he wants to pretend like he's cool. So he takes all these like ridiculous Twitter pictures with a gigantic mug that has the Reese's logo on it. That doesn't make you cool, dude. You know what makes you cool? Standing up for the people. Yeah, that makes you cool.
It's so random.
Yeah.
There's only one Pai I'm in favor of, Johnny Pai. All right, let's go.
Okay, let's do a little international news. Puerto Rico, which of course is not a US state, but a US territory, is expected to close up to 184 of its public schools next year. Now, of course, this has to do with its economic crisis and its inability to pay back more than $70 billion in loans. Now, to give you some more details on this pretty devastating story, let's go to the graphics. Roughly 27,000 students, mostly from kindergarten through 4th grade, and 2,700 teachers will be affected by the closures, which are set to take place before next school year. The governor of Puerto Rico said that the Commonwealth has filed for a type of bankruptcy to help restructure its more than $70 billion in debt after negotiations with multiple creditors failed. Now, there are multiple reasons for why the economy in Puerto Rico fell apart, but also understand that even though it's considered a US territory, it does not have the same protections that US citizens have. Now, the people in Puerto Rico are considered US citizens, but again, they don't have certain protections like Chapter 9 bankruptcy, for instance, okay? So let's move on to some other details. About 150 school closures happened between 2010 and 2015 already, and 10% of its population in the last 10 years, 46% of the population lives below the US poverty level, and unemployment rate is more than 11%, and the labor force participation hovers around 40%. So let's get into the details of why everything is kind of falling apart in Puerto Rico. And it really goes back to, the mid 1990s and some of the economic behavior that occurred in the 1980s. So in the 1980s, a lot of corporations in the US were like, yo, let's go to Puerto Rico, because it'll serve as a little bit of a tax haven, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to pay the same amount of taxes as we would in the mainland US. And so they went there, and of course that created jobs, let's keep it real. It created a huge tax haven for these corporations, but it also really helped with the economy there. And the economy became very reliant on these corporations. Then in the mid 1990s, the US government decided, no, we're not gonna do that anymore. All these pharmaceutical companies that are taking advantage of no taxes, no federal taxes in Puerto Rico will no longer have that privilege, okay? And so once the tax code changed, corporations were like, all right, well, then I guess we're just gonna go back to the US or find another country that has lower taxes. So what did that do? That took a lot of opportunity and a lot of businesses out of Puerto Rico. And so all of a sudden they're struggling, the struggle begins there. There are a bunch of other factors, but I wanna give you a chance to jump in.
Okay, first of all, my favorite part of this story so far was when the corporate executives were like, yo, let's go to Puerto Rico. Okay, so that tax loophole should have never existed in the first place.
Right.
And then they moved the tax loophole so that it went to a completely different country. Here's an idea, don't create a tax loophole. So because that robs the American taxpayers of money that they should have from those corporations. And so when they leapfrog to different places, it leaves devastation behind. So now, that's part of the problem. The other part of the problem is the one you mentioned earlier, which is that Puerto Rico has this totally unfair rules that were put upon it by the US Congress about how the rules are different for their bankruptcy than they would be for any other jurisdiction in the US. So that puts them behind the 8 ball, and they have no leverage to negotiate with the creditors. And the creditors think, I don't care about your kids. No, that they don't go to school anymore. I don't care, I wanna get paid. Now look, when you make a loan, so this is how capitalism works, they'll pretend otherwise. You're not owed 100% of the loan. Now you might think like, what do you mean? Of course, that's what the contract says, right? But the reason that they get an interest rate and they get money is because they know they are taking a certain level of risk. And they know that sometimes that risk doesn't work out. That's why they're getting paid for taking that risk. And when it doesn't work out, you don't get 100% back. You get some percentage back depending on how that loan worked out. And so a lot of times you get a haircut, sometimes it'll be a small one, sometimes it'll be a gigantic one. So if you say, no, I don't want any risk, then you shouldn't get any interest. Capitalism works based on risk, What they want is, and that's why they passed that law in Puerto Rico, because they're able to legally bribe congressmen here in the US is, no, I want the money, but I don't want the risk. And so if Puerto Rico turned out to be a bad loan because I was trying to take advantage of the tax loopholes, et cetera, and I thought that it would keep going, but it turns out it didn't, well, then I want to just socialize the costs. I want to privatize the gains and socialize the costs. So now your kids don't go to school because I made a bad loan. I don't believe in capitalism. I don't think that if I made a bad loan, I should suffer the consequences. I think you should suffer the consequences. That's not capitalism. And so now they're crushing Puerto Rico to try to get back an unnatural amount of the loan back, because nobody's guaranteed a profit in capitalism. And that's what they're insisting now, while pretending to be all high and mighty and holier than thou.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And keep in mind, it's frustrating for Puerto Rico because since it's considered a US territory, not a US state, it still must abide by US trade policies. And that is also negatively impacting its economy, right? So for instance, when they want to export things, they have to use US ships in order to do it. And that actually ends up being way more expensive, and it becomes less competitive compared to other Caribbean countries that can do it on the cheap. You know what I'm saying? So there are all sorts of factors playing a role, and the US has a hand in it. So if we're gonna consider it a US territory, I do find it very interesting that they're not able to take advantage of the same bankruptcy protections that we have in the mainland. So we'll see how this plays out, but so far, people are leaving Puerto Rico for the US, for US states, I should be specific.
And you know what'll happen after that, Anna? Then conservatives will complain, what are all these Puerto Ricans doing here? Oh my God, they're all coming. No, but you rigged the rules against them. And so now they're suffering because of that. They can't even send their kids to school. So don't be surprised when consequences flow from that. So we're not asking for too much when we say, hey, if they're part of the US in any way, shape, or form, they should at least get the same rules as the rest of us. And we should be fair in how we deal with Puerto Rico. And that is not what's happening now.
All right, guys, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, some more international news, including the second deadliest country after Syria. And then finally, how many couples are divorcing because of Trump? We have numbers.
Yeah, and you might be surprised at who the second deadliest country is. So if you think it's Afghanistan, it's not. It might be a lot closer to home than you realize. Ooh, that was a tease. Okay, we'll be right back.
Do you trust the establishment media?
The United States economy has never been better. Monetary policy is spectacular.
Everybody thought Jamie Dimon was the king of Wall Street last week.
Well, it might be Ken Lewis now. He takes the crown. The best sales force out there is Merrill Lynch, and now it goes to BofA. It's pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing. Lewis now. Buying opportunity.
I do think this is a buying opportunity. We're going to see a stabilization and just a tremendous snapback.
The rally will be jaw-dropping.
The Occupy Wall Street movement is not a spontaneous protest against economic inequality.
This is what we mean by the establishment press.
It is a well-thought-out campaign.
To bring down the infrastructure of this country.
The embarrassment is that I'm given credibility in this world because of the disappointment that the public has in what the news media does.
I'm the former chairman of the Veterans Committee, and I've learned a little bit about the cost of war. What the president is trying to do, and I agree with him, is to do everything that we can without going to war.
So what do you say to your critics? I'm talking about Democratic critics who say, you know what, he's really just a socialist pacifist.
I very rarely read in any coverage of Bernie that he's a socialist.
Bernie Sanders is a socialist, for God's sake.
Most analysts are saying that Hillary Clinton's going to win in a landslide.
I continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president.
We've got Trump at 279, 259.
Wait a minute.
I'm winning the presidency.
I know you don't believe that. Sorry,
We're not going to be polite anymore. You know what we're going to do? We're going to fight back.
Fight for a free and independent media. We're done with politeness. We fight back.
We are going to put together the best investigative reporting team in the country.
You like Jordan Chariton in the field, challenging Democrats? He's the one that took down Donald Brazil. Thank God for that.
You know, give me 10 Jordan Charitons. Look at the damage I could do.
TYT will give you the four horsemen.
And we will let them gallop. Help unleash real journalism in the country.
We don't need anybody else anymore but you guys. TYTnetwork.com/go. This is going to be amazing.
I think I'd get along very well with Vladimir Putin. I just think so. You said I had small hands. They're not small. I never heard that one before.
Young Turks. So today was an exciting announcement day, and I think we delivered on that. In the first segment, if you missed it, we announced that Congressman Ro Khanna is coming out as a Justice Democrat. That is the first sitting congressman to come out as an actual Justice Democrat. My guess is that There'll be some blowback from that, and there'll be a lot of upset folks in Washington, which is awesome.
Can I share just a quick fun story about Kana?
Yeah.
So the dispensary I used to go to used to be called Kanacology. So every time you say his name, I think about marijuana.
Is that a thing? What does Kanacology mean?
That was just the name of the. They've rebranded since. I don't know if there was like a cease and desist letter sent to them. What was going on? But every time I hear his name, I think about marijuana. Every single time.
Well, that's random.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what I think of now? Justice. Look, I'll talk more about it in the post game. Okay. About how real that dude is, okay? That's tytnetwork.com/join to become a member. And all the members get, we got Old School tonight. You watch that live. You can watch it anytime you want. Tomorrow, Aggressive Progressive. Get the whole 2-hour show ad free, of course. And then post games. The other thing I'll talk about is a fun story about a recent Uber driver that I had, where she said something shocking, and I was like, "Whoa! I've never heard that before." So 2 really fun stories in the postgame for you guys. And so Congressman Kana, by the way, was sitting in the before he came on in the Hendler conference room. It's a Hendler family conference room. That's right. And I do want to make a quick correction for you guys. Camera D, that was bought by DJ Padilla. That's a DJ Dizzle camera. Okay, I said Sizzle. That was wrong. It's DJ Dizzle.
Is he really a DJ?
Well, I guess.
That's kind of cool. Send us some mixtapes.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Send Anna a mixtape. That's kind of cute. Okay, and let me read a couple of quick tweets for you guys. Brandon Atkins says, so DeVos bought her government job and an HBC gives her a doctorate on top. Being rich is fucking easy.
Yeah, for real.
I mean, Brandon, pretty good point there. Amanda Guthrie writes in, the graduates paid for their commencement. They earned their degrees. They can scream if they want it, as far as I'm concerned. Jeff Horton asked a tough question for you, Anna. Anna, did you know about the Reese's mug before or after watching Last Week Tonight?
I had seen a tweet before John Oliver's segment, but I watched John Oliver religiously. So when he brought it up, I had seen the tweet and I thought to myself, what a douchebag, right? And then when John Oliver pointed it out, I thought, God, John Oliver gets it right every time. Every time.
Okay, you have to go to dinner with John Oliver or Neil deGrasse Tyson.
John Oliver.
No.
Yeah. Look.
That's almost as shocking as the Uber story I'm gonna tell later.
You know why? Because it's dinner. Like, we're gonna have a conversation. I feel like, Neil is out of my wheelhouse. Like, he's just too smart for me. He's like an astrophysicist. No, I'm not saying that John Oliver isn't too smart, right? But like, it's just smart.
John I can handle. He's,
I just feel like I would be able to hold a conversation with him more.
You go hold a conversation with either.
What am I gonna talk about? Like, oh yeah, like the stars, like they're pretty. I don't know much about astrophysics. I'm kind of dumb.
But you get to learn more. No, I don't know anything about it either, and I'm a genius. All right, believe me. Anyway, last thing, the mathematician says, the disaster in Puerto Rico, which our Congress created when no one was looking, is one of the unspoken stories we need to talk about. Mission accomplished, we just talked about it.
By the way, several of you actually tweeted to me asking me to cover that story, and I love that. So suggestions like that are appreciated.
Hey, something positive on Twitter.
Yeah.
By the way, on YouTube Super Chat, Joe Wilson TV says, we're all famous to a few people. I don't know what that means, but God bless your heart. Okay, and member shout outs for today, Chris McKenzie and Tree Baker. Thank you guys for being members. We love our members. tytnetwork.com/join. Okay, next.
Okay. The International Institute for Strategic Studies looked into various countries that are dealing with turmoil to figure out which countries are actually the deadliest. Now, unsurprisingly, at the very top of that list is Syria because of its conflict and some of the actions taken by Bashar al-Assad against civilians and rebels. But just to compare the numbers, you should keep in mind that Mexico is actually the second country that's considered the deadliest, where tens of thousands of people are killed every single year due to the cartel violence there and the continuous drug war. Now, Syria is the world's deadliest conflict zone for the 5th consecutive year, causing an estimated 50,000 casualties in 2016. Wow. That is an insane number of people who have lost their lives as a result of the conflict. In Mexico, the number is a little under half. So 23,000 people died in the fight against drug cartels in 2016. In other smaller Central American countries battling cartels, including El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, another 16,000 have been killed.
But let's just pause there for a second, Anna, because combined that's 39,000. They're almost caught up to Syria.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody talks about it, but this insane war on drugs cost 39,000 lives in just those countries in just last year. It drives me crazy. We know Nixon's aide told us we started the war on drugs for political reasons because we wanted to target the two sets of political people against us, blacks and liberals. And we thought, oh, we'll get to imprison them. And before those political reasons, we now have this insanity. We know marijuana is not any more dangerous than alcohol. There's a ton of studies that show that it's actually far more beneficial than alcohol. And yet we continue this madness. We imprison all these people in America, millions upon millions of people, and then all those tens of thousands of people die in Mexico. But here in America, we're like oblivious to. There's Joe Manchin in West Virginia, a so-called Democrat, saying we start a new war on drugs. No,
it's so dumb. But honestly, this goes further than marijuana. And I know that this argument makes some people uncomfortable, especially considering the fact that we're dealing with a heroin epidemic here in the US. But right now, cartels are turning from marijuana to other harder drugs, because the reality is that as you legalize drugs in the United States, like marijuana, there's less of a business opportunity for these cartels. And so they're like, okay, well, they're legalizing it, there's less demand for it, so let's turn to other things, whether it be cocaine or poppy plant production is actually through the roof in Mexico right now, and the government's trying to find a way to deal with it. And it's because there is a huge demand for heroin, there is a huge demand for opioids. And so, yeah, we can criminalize all we want, or, and again, it makes people uncomfortable, you can legalize it and regulate it, or at least decriminalize it and regulate it the way Portugal did. They did that, and what happened? The drug use actually dipped considerably. You stop criminalizing people for having drug addictions. You take the power away from cartels. Now that requires smart policy, and unfortunately we have an incredibly unintelligent administration running the country right now. So I have absolutely no hope that they're gonna right the wrongs. But these are the things that we need to have real conversations about. Continuing the war on drugs is not gonna help. The number of casualties in Mexico actually dipped a little bit, but then shot back up, and I'll tell you why. So the arrests and killings of top leaders in major cartels like Los Zetas, infamous for their brutality and mass decapitations, contributed to the dip in violence, but new groups have emerged, adopting similarly brutal strategies for territorial expansion and control. So it's like the war on terror, right? Let's go after the terrorists. But the more we get involved and the more we try to fight this war on terror, the more you see other groups of terrorists emerge, right? And so there's smart policy, or there's a continuation of what we've been doing, which hasn't been working.
But there's a reason why these wars are never ending, just like George Orwell warned us about, because people profit from those wars, so that they think, yeah, the whole point of the war is that it's supposed to be perpetual. Now, if you are an American citizen or a citizen of any of these other countries, does it look like it's working for you? How many decades are we gonna go with this failed strategy before we turn around? So it's on you, especially in America, to make the decision to stop voting in favor of this insane war on drugs. Look, prohibition never works. It didn't work when we did it with alcohol. What did it create? It created gangs, Al Capone and all those other gangs out of Chicago and so many other places. Then when we did prohibition on marijuana, what did it do? It created gangs. What did both those gangs do? Kill a lot of people, whether it was in America or in Mexico and other places. And by the way, Anna's right, prohibition on those other drugs don't work either. And legalizing it or decriminalizing it doesn't mean you like the drugs. You shouldn't take heroin, it's a disastrous idea, right? But when you do those things, it actually makes that drug use less, not more.
Right.
When are we going to actually look at facts and make decisions based on those, instead of letting our politicians drive us into these endless wars that only benefit them and not us?
Yep. I want to talk about this story a little more in the post game because I want to make more of an immigration point related to that story, a story about or a point about refugees and all that. So let's talk about that in the post game. All right, moving on. Political disagreements seem to be front and center on social media, but some research indicates that those disagreements actually lead to some turmoil in personal relationships as well. In fact, there was a recent study that looked into how many couples have either gotten into significant arguments or have completely broken up because of disagreements over the Trump administration. So according to the International Business Times, new research shows that 1 in 10 US breakups are now the result of political disagreements. Almost 1 in 4 couples said they and their partner have disagreed or argued about politics more than ever since Trump was elected. 10% of couples and 22% of millennials have ended relationships because of political disagreements. Okay, I want to stop for a second because that 22% number for millennials gives me the perception that millennials are paying super close attention and are incredibly engaged in politics, right? They keep getting painted as these like lazy bums that don't know anything and they rely too much on the internet. No, they rely on the internet and that's a good thing because they're more informed and they're more engaged and they're more invested in politics. Now, whether or not you think it's a good thing that they're breaking up with their significant other over politics, that's a different story. But I do think it's a good sign that they feel fired up and passionate about the issues.
I think it's a good thing. I think it's good that they pay attention significantly more than older folks do, and it's because they grew up on a media that's different. They grew up in a media where you could look anything up, whereas old people grew up on a media that was a box in their living room that just gave them propaganda. Of course, you guys are smarter, right? So, of course, intelligence is a different matter, but you have more knowledge at your disposal, and you've taken advantage of that. Okay, now on to whether people should break up. I think they should. So
I totally agree. I totally agree.
Now, not over minor disagreements, and do my wife and I agree on everything politically? Of course not, no, and that's normal, right? And are there members of our extended family that voted for Trump? Yes, and can I break up with them? No, I can't, right? And it is what it is, right? And like, don't go and just get into a fight with your great uncle. It's not gonna work, and just let him watch Fox News and everything's gonna be okay, right? So you gotta know what you can make a difference with. On the other hand, if it's your young cousin, you might wanna talk sense into them by giving them facts or just keep sending them Young Turks videos. Okay, now, and I don't mean to give up on older Americans, okay? I believe in you. Okay, now, but if it's your boyfriend or girlfriend, and they think Trump is awesome, that means can only lead to 2 conclusions, okay? So I'm the bad guy, I'll say it. Either they're not that bright or they're a pretty bad person, right?
Yeah.
So, because I mean, look, let's make it real. It's not because, okay, hey, we disagree on tax cuts, right? I think it should be, tax rate should be 17% and you think it should be 19%, whatever, making up numbers, right? Like, oh my God, then you're a bad person, right? No. In Trump's case, here's a guy who clearly is absolutely clueless and dangerously so, doesn't know who the leader of North Korea is, doesn't realize that healthcare was gonna be complicated. Just, he's a moron. And so, but most people don't know that. They really don't know all the details of politics that we know. So I'm not saying to any Trump person, you should immediately pull the chute, but have a conversation. And if they think it's great that our president doesn't know who the leader of North Korea is, even though we might get into a war with North Korea, well, it's troubling, right? If they think, oh, it's great that our president grabs women by the genitalia without their permission, that's troubling, right? I mean, I can go on and on for the reasons why it's troubling. I mean, I don't want to hang out with a person who thinks that all that stuff is awesome.
Look, I agree with you for the most part, but also there is some context that we should keep in mind. So, is your significant other very invested in politics, is paying attention to what's going on, and has strong opinions in favor of Trump and what he's doing? In that case, get out of there. Like I couldn't deal with that, right? But if you're dating someone who's not really invested or engaged in politics and just, has like an uninformed opinion and is just like, yeah, he or she defends Trump by saying he tells it like it is. I don't know. He's an anti-establishment guy. I feel like there's hope, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I totally agree.
So don't shut down the conversation as soon as someone says something a little positive about Trump, because those kinds of conversations need to be had, right? But if you have like, I don't know, like a Richard Spencer type person or a David Duke type person, like get out. It's not a good idea. Or Steve Bannon type person.
Yeah, so if somebody says, hey, look, I'm worried about how immigration is affecting wages, perfectly legitimate conversation, we can agree to disagree on that. If someone says, well, look, those guys coming across the border, they're all criminals or rapists, you know how those Latinos are. Get out, somebody take a picture, get out.
Yeah. All right, so let's look at some other stats from this study that was done by Wakefield Research. So they found that 22% of Americans know a couple relationship has been negatively impacted specifically due to President Trump's election, okay? 24% of Americans in a relationship say they and their partner have disagreed or argued about politics more than ever since Trump was elected. And then finally, I think this is the most interesting stat, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, especially because you're married, I'm married. 33% of Americans, 43% of millennials who did not vote for Trump said that they would consider divorcing their spouse if they did so.
Damn, man, that's a high number.
That is a high number.
Now, girlfriend, boyfriend, that's one thing. Marriage is serious, dog. So you got kids? Well, give them another shot. Like, see if we can talk a little bit more about why maybe Latinos are not criminals or rapists, and maybe we shouldn't profile Muslims, and that's an un-American thing to do, and the list goes on and on. Try to work that stuff out.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I just feel like someone's political opinion or who they support as a politician, let's say that they are engaged, they are invested, they know everything there is to know. Who they support represents who they are as a person, what their values are, what their principles are. And so if you find yourself in a marriage where your partner is just the antithesis of who you are, has the complete opposite values as you, like, you must have been living under a rock. I mean, why'd you marry this person in the first place? You should have had some idea of who they were, right? Yeah. But nonetheless, if it becomes like a constant point of conflict, then yeah, you gotta do what's right for you. Do you, boo? If you got a divorce, divorce.
I don't know, man. Divorce is a hell of a thing.
It is, man. It's expensive and costly, and
it's not just that. You
drama.
It's not just that. You're married to that person. You try to build a life together.
Yeah.
But it is a rude awakening if you wake up one day and you realize the person next to you actually has these terrible thoughts about other people, etc. But most of the time they just don't know. So just take a breather for a second. Send them Young Turks videos, and it'll all work out. Okay. The one guy who should get divorced though is that Roberto Beristain.
Yeah.
Where his wife voted for Donald Trump, and so he got sent back to Mexico.
But
that guy's got every right in the world.
But she didn't know. She didn't know it was going to affect her negatively. She just thought all these other Mexicans were going to get deported. Please reconsider your relationship.
Okay, well, they definitely should. All right, look, guys, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take a quick break here. Now, at the bottom of the hour, the break that we take is like microscopic, and then we come right back, and we're gonna tell you at least one other story. It's a trippy story about a white cop who turned out not to be white. Damn, and the consequences that came from that. And it is very, very interesting, so we'll do that for you in a minute. Okay, bye-bye. Back on the Young Turks, told you it was a small break. Mike writes in, politics are fundamental to who you are as a person. powering through a relationship with significant differences is like denying who you are. Again, it depends on how much that couple is into politics. You watch the show, you're more likely to be, right? And we are, but not a lot of people are. Okay, not everybody is. Deborah NYC writes in, my ears perked up when I heard you mention the Hendler family conference room. I have yet to tell my husband about it. Well, Deborah, we just told him about it.
Dang.
So not only did Ro Khanna sit in the Hendler family conference room earlier today, but we had our production meeting in there as well. So we're not playing, we always deliver on what we promised. I think I delivered that it was a pretty cool announcement, and we delivered on all the cameras and the chairs, et cetera, that everybody's bought. Actually, speaking of which, Anna, you are sitting on the Jeffrey Manziel chair.
Nice.
He named that. This is the Nick Wilde chair for my last fundraising from 2013. Can you believe that? It was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so we got one more story for you guys.
Yes, we do. All right. A Michigan cop is suing the city for discrimination after, or at least the city he works for discrimination. Let me start that again because I fucked it up. Okay, moving on.
Okay, I almost spit out there. Okay.
All right. A Michigan cop is suing the city that he works for, that's Hastings Police Department, for discrimination after he, a white police officer, took a DNA test and found out that he's actually 18% black. Okay, so let me give you the details of that. So it's a chain of events that began when he took a genetic test through Ancestry.com in December and was surprised to learn he could trace 18% of his DNA to regions in Africa, okay? So he tells this to his colleagues and then they start constantly poking fun at him. To the point where he's like, I can't take it anymore, I'm now gonna file a lawsuit, a discrimination lawsuit. Okay, so they start calling him Kunte, okay? Of course, after the novel Roots. And then they had like a Christmas tree during the holidays, and they had one ornament dedicated to him. Let's take a look at graphic 23. That said 18%, of course, referencing the Ancestry.com DNA thing, and then his name. His name is Cleon Brown.
His name is Cleon Brown, and he didn't know he was black?
I know. So there he is. It's really interesting because all of a sudden, the shoe is on the other foot, right? And so it's interesting that he gets made fun of and then he immediately sues for discrimination. I wonder what his reaction would be if there were a black police officer, a visibly black police officer, who would sue for the same reason, right? Would he stand up for that person? I don't know, Cleon, maybe he would. Nonetheless, the treatment that he's dealing with is inexcusable, and I'm glad that he's standing up for himself with a lawyer.
Yeah. No, this whole genetic composition thing is trippy, man. And what does it mean to have an identity, right? So for example, a friend of mine who's black found out recently that he's got a portion of his family, I think, that's Spanish. So I'm like, Nige, did that make you feel more Spanish, right? No, because he grew up in a culture that, he's from Trinidad, that was already very specific to that, and it's really the culture you grew up in. But it is still, it's still a mind trip because like there's an eighth of my family that we're not sure if they're Kurdish or they're originally Crusaders, etc. So I kind of want to take one of those tests. Now, is it going to make me go like, oh my God, I now totally appreciate Crusaders? No, unlikely, right? Yeah. But by the way, guys, you don't know what's in your DNA, so maybe you should be open-minded to everybody already. I know that's a radical idea, right?
Exactly, but like, I get that human nature is tribalistic in a lot of ways, and maybe there's an evolutionary advantage to that, to survive. But we're now supposed to be civilized human beings who should understand that overall we're the same, regardless of the way that we look. And it's true, like, we're all mixing. Like we're all mixed. We all mixed in the past. We're all mixing now. It's a lot of fun. Like just
it's a lot of fun.
Like just everybody open your minds and allow it to happen. Enjoy it. Like what? Really, you're gonna make
certain
fun
things
of
have already been open. That's why we mixed in the first place.
Right.
So just open up your mind as well. Look, it's on the discrimination part. Look. if they were all friends and they razz him for a while and then they let it go, okay, whatevs, right? But obviously he didn't appreciate it and apparently didn't find it friendly, right? And it is amazing that when they thought he was white, everybody's cool.
Right.
When they find out that he's actually, even being 18% black, not good enough, right? Then it's not, then all of a sudden they're not cool with him. Again, if he hadn't sued, you'd think like, look, dude, it's a bunch of guys razzing each other, who cares, right? But apparently it's serious, right? It got to the point where he had to file suit to try to get him to stop.
Yeah, and I missed an important detail about the Santa ornament. His was the only black Santa ornament. Yeah. So
of course, right.
They're children. These are cops. They're children.
Yeah, and by the way, if they think that that's how they view one of their colleagues, how do they view the folks that they're policing? So that's the cause for concern. And you know what I would love to do as part of the lawsuit? Make every other cop there take a DNA test.
Oof.
So maybe that's how we solve the problem of discrimination in this country. One, we make all the cops take DNA tests. Okay, and then two, we all take DNA tests. You know why? Because in America, unless you're a recent immigrant, right? There's a lot of mixing. I mean, don't make me get into a downer story about why there was mixing, right? But there was some mixing that happened early that was not good, okay? And so that is in a lot of the DNA of this country. So remember the story we did, Anna, about that racist guy, like a KKK guy, and then on TV they did one of these DNA tests and found out he was part black, and he was like, "What's it going on?" Yeah, I got news for you. A lot of folks in the country are partly black, partly white. So get over it. Get over it already, America.
Yep.
Okay, we're out of time. All right, we do have a fun post game for you guys, though. What is Ro Khanna like in real life? The new champion for Justice Democrats. Anna's got more thoughts on the war on drugs, and so do I. Actually, want to talk about Afghanistan a little bit. And then my Uber driver that gave me a shocking story. Okay.
I can't wait to hear it.
All right, that's at tytnetwork.com/join. And don't forget Old School tonight at 8 o'clock. Bye-bye.